Hi dear friends, in this short lesson let's discuss a little bit such a very interesting, huge and flexible and maybe understudied realm of the English grammar as prepositions. Not only grammar, though remember please my friends, grammar is everything about the language, because this is called grammar in a broad sense. Usually you perceive or the word grammar as grammar in a narrow sense, like do, does, have, has, something like that, yeah? But actually all aspects of language are studied by grammar. Grammar is a huge concept, so it's a good idea to learn the concept of grammar. If you conceive of it as a broad thing, as a philosophy, then you will love it more and more and more. Today, let's say a couple of words about prepositions. You know, this topic is almost never discussed in depth by any teachers or courses. Of course, there are some like studies and everything. I'm not such an encyclopedia, but like the articles, and yes, they are left for the last resort. You know, for the last they are put off. So I have two news for you. You know, the first news is not negative, but like a prescriptive one. Please remember that prepositions in your native language, whether it's, I don't know, Ukrainian, Chinese, or Kazakh, or I don't know, German and English, they don't coincide semantically. So, if, for example, in your language, when you say something like this, I graduated from school, and then you say something which corresponds, in your opinion, to English on, with excellent grades, yeah? So in English, usually they say not on, they say with excellent grades. I see such types of mistakes very often in your essays while my students are writing their home task and during the lesson, especially beginners. They confuse prepositions. So our recommendation, philosophy, rule number one is, remember please, don't translate prepositions. Don't translate, because you will make a lot of mistakes. It's not awful, you know, you will not be penalized severely for such mistakes. These are not mistakes like in spelling or basic grammar, but why should we lose some points if we can avoid it? So the first philosophy is, when I write any preposition, any to, for, with, at, on, in, under, above, and so on and so on and so on, though under and above are purely not prepositions, but initially they are adverbs, it seems to me, but let it be. So we are writing those prepositions and conjunctions. I spend additional 2 or 3 seconds thinking about how would a native speaker say that. You watch a lot of videos, shorts, YouTube shorts, Instagram videos, anything, TikTok, something like that. There you hear and read a lot of primitive sentences. Those sentences are told you. Why I say primitive? Because, you know, for you not to bother. Nowadays we have such a fashion of entertaining you with something primitive. It has always been, but today it's like more technological, but the principle is the same. And so you will see a lot of those primitive sentences, and you hear and see thousands of such sentences. There you hear thousands of such prepositions. So if you spend 1 or 2 or 3 seconds and you try to remember, you know, your mind is working, how would a native speaker say that? In 90% of cases you will come up with some preposition not translated from your language, as you have been maybe taught at school, but some real preposition. So at least a better preposition. Now, rule number 2 is like a good news. I have put here several sentences borrowed from, you know, real websites, real forums, and written by educated native speakers, I tell you so. For example, one site where we can read some testimonials about good tutors and coaches, tutors who coach to Duolingo, IELTS, TOEFL, something like that. So this is a sentence. Initial sentence was, he coaches, like this tutor, he coaches to top results. Okay, he coaches to top results. But at the same time, if you read this website, you will meet some phrases like he coaches for top results, even maybe he coaches with top results. If you try to feel, you will feel that the message is a little bit different, a little bit, like 3%. 2 top results means like direction of my efforts, the vector of my knowledge to do it. 4 top results, like why I'm doing it, why I'm doing for this goal, for this end, you see? Although we can say to this end, to this aim, or maybe for this goal, for this aim. And finally with with usually is used like here when we have already the result. For example, I finished school, I completed school, I graduated blah, 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 with excellent grades, or I passed my test with top grades, top results. So when I have something, I have got something, usually we say with, but I say usually. Always there are exceptions, always, my friends. So rule number 2, we have a certain freedom, which is nice. Nobody can determine our initial intention, you know, my initial direct message of my mind, what I wanted. You see, there are always shades. So these shades give us a certain leeway, as it is called, a certain freedom. Let's read 2 more, for example. If you look attentively, you will see the principle, the phrase is the same. Highly recommended, especially for those who can start working with him early. You see, especially for those. Okay, for those, let it be, for those. Let's read another one. I highly recommend him to anyone looking for help with college essays or writing assignments, blah, 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 blah. You see, to anyone. Why not for? Why here we have 4 and here we have 2? There is no difference, you see. I mean, grammatical or something, we can exchange them freely because there is a semantic difference. Semantics means meaning. There is a little semantic difference here and here, but nobody knows when you're writing, you know, this little micro semantic difference. So don't be afraid to interchange sometimes your prepositions. Why I have highlighted this? Anyone looking for help with college essays. Sometimes maybe you will see something like looking for help on college essays, or at college essays, or about college essays, or for college essays. You see? Yes? The usual word is with, but there are variations of those prepositions. I just put them here too, for with it and others. So again, at some website I saw 2 different authors write something like that. She got 9 at her last IELTS. Okay, you say, okay, very nice. But then you meet, she got 9 on her last IELTS, or even in her last IELTS. I saw. You can say that in her last IELTS maybe is not so literate, like it's a mistake. Who knows, my friends? They are written by. I took only those sentences borrowed from messages. I see that educated speakers, you know, wrote them, because I see other sentences. So you see, we have 3 variants here. And I'm sure nobody can punish me for this, because they don't know what I want to say exactly. At, on, in. Of course, in this case, it's better to use at or on, not in. But. There is always this but. And one more phrase, my friends. For example, for you to feel the freedom. So we don't translate from our language, but we have the freedom, you see? We don't translate, but we are free. Such a very, very common phrase. Under the circumstances, yeah? Under those circumstances. By the way, a beautiful phrase. You're welcome to use it in your writing, speaking, at any test. You will get nice score, because it's a classic, you know, serious phrase. Not top-notch, but not primitive. So under the circumstances, under these circumstances, under such circumstance, comma, it means under such condition, in such being placed in such condition or something like that, I would do this. So, but I saw with my own eyes several variants of this. With those circumstances, in those circumstances, at those circumstances, my friends. Yes, 4 variants. If somebody is going to say that under is the only possible variant and all 3 others are illiterate, like, you know, ungrammatical, and they're bad, I cannot agree. I cannot agree, because language is flexible, my friends. Language is flexible, especially in speaking. Especially in speaking, you're given more freedom. On the other hand, in speaking, it's more difficult to correct yourself. Yeah, if in writing you're sitting, you're looking, you see, okay, no problem. You just, you know, you type something else. But while speaking, you can correct yourself. This like semi-automatic correction. But if you do it once or twice, it's okay. If you do it 7 times, you will lose some points, because yes, like you're speaking very fast and you say, and at those, under those circumstances, it's okay. But if you do it in every sentence, it's a problem. So don't do it, of course. In order to speak well, you should get into this a very popular concept nowadays, like flow mode. You see, the mode of freedom, the mode of genius, something. And by the way, in my online lessons and in my video course for DET preparation, I discuss it thoroughly with my students. Yes, psychology matters. You understand, my friend, that given the same level of language, 2 different candidates can score different grades different points at, for example, Duolingo or IELTS or something like that. Plus minus 1 at IELTS, I tell you, it's though they will say no, it's impossible, everything is super objective. I have seen a lot of times how it is objective, how the candidates whom I know, they cannot speak for 6, they get 7, and those beautiful guys who can speak for 8.5, that they get 6. You know, it's very, very subjective, and psychology matters, your impression upon the reader, on the listener. So okay, but I will not distract you with these philosophies. The message of this lesson is as follows. No, don't translate, just don't even not learn that one preposition in your native language corresponds to exactly one preposition in English. It's wrong. This will let you down, you will lose points. On the other hand, just look at these instances and you will see that you have freedom with your prepositions. Just spend additional 2 or 3 seconds while you're writing, while you're speaking. You cannot spend 3 seconds, just you'll have to get into that mode I told you about. Write to me if you want to have some private lessons with me. Of course I will explain to you, but regarding writing, 2, 3, 4 seconds. I'm trying to remember how would a native speaker write here, for or to or with. Your subconsciousness will give you some hint, some idea, some suggestion for sure, if you just let it. Okay, my friends, so if you need urgent and serious assistance in your IELTS, TOEFL, Duolingo preparation, just drop me a line. I always give my contacts on the screen and in the description to the video. And remember please about my video course, DET with flying colors, for your independent preparation, your self-study preparation for Duolingo test. There are 91 lessons, giving you about 80 hours of video. Of course I will give you some discount if you ask me about it. Visit the website and you will see everything. Okay, my friends, I love you, wish you success, see you in our next lesson.